Session of the Portland City Council. Carla, could you please call the roll?
Good morning, Mayor. Yes. Hardesty?
Here.
Udaly?
Here.
Fritz?
Here.
Wheeler?
Here. Under Portland City Code and state law, the City Council is holding this meeting electronically. All members of the council are attending remotely by phone, and the city has made several avenues available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The public can also provide written testimony to council by emailing the council clerk. The council is taking these steps as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to limit in-person contact and promote physical distancing. The pandemic is an emergency that threatens the public health, safety, and welfare, which requires us to meet remotely by electronic communications. Thank you for your patience, flexibility, and understanding as we manage through this difficult situation to do the city's business. We'll now hear from legal counsel on the rules of order and decorum.
Thank you, Mayor. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. The published council agenda at portlandoregon.gov/auditor contains information about how and when you may sign up for testimony while the city council is holding electronic meetings. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. Presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When your time is up, the presiding officer will ask you to conclude. Disruptive conduct such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being placed on hold or ejected from the remainder of the electronic meeting. Finally, please be aware that all council meetings are recorded.
We need to let everybody have it.
All right, thank you, colleagues. It's my understanding that at the request of the New Portlanders Policy Commission, they'd like to reschedule the proclamation and the report that were scheduled for the 9:30 time certain to be responsive to community needs and the issues that need to be highlighted at this moment. Before we begin our regular agenda this morning, I'd like to take time for my colleagues and I to reflect briefly on the moment in which we find ourselves. I will keep my remarks brief as I want to leave this space for my colleagues. For the last 5 nights, thousands of people have come together to grieve, to show solidarity, and to demand accountability and justice for police brutality following the murder of George Floyd. The brutal murder of George Floyd laid bare a harsh reality. Racism continues to rob our Black communities of safety, of health, and of prosperity. Too often, the very institutions that are supposed to protect and serve our community have instead failed people of color, specifically our Black community. Mr. Floyd's murder announced that reality so loudly, so unconscionably. They are tired, they are hurt, and they are grieving. Over the past week, I've listened to community leaders. I've met with organizers of demonstrations, and I've been in the difficult but necessary conversations to focus on what comes next. I'll say it again until I reach every single Portlander. Keep holding us accountable. I want to be held accountable. And I want you to know that I will continue to hold myself accountable as your mayor, and I know that my colleagues feel exactly the same way. I am your ally. I believe in justice and reform. I believe in our peaceful demonstrators and their calls for reform. This is all of our responsibility. Thank you. And if my colleagues would like to reflect on the moment now or frankly later in the meeting, whatever is your preference.
So Mayor, I would love to see if my other colleagues want to make a statement. I want to make a statement, but I want to give them the space first.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Fritz, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Commissioner Hardesty, I appreciate that statement. You have been doing such a great job of leadership with the mayor, and I feel a bit awkward being a white woman being asked to be speaking before my black colleague. So I'll just say that I'm so grateful to the work that you and Mayor Wheeler have been doing. The anguish of our community is long-standing. The anguish of Black Portlanders has been in the forefront, and justice has been denied for so long. And in fact, my staff and I are overwhelmed by the outpouring of support and unable to respond to everybody who's writing in and calling. And so we appreciate that. And I'll have a statement on my website later today. Thank you.
I'll try to keep this brief. I went to bed in tears watching police fire gas canisters as they were rolling down streets into random crowds of protesters. And I woke up horrified by images that were shared with me this morning. My first experience of a protest was 30 years ago when I was 20 years old, and I watched Portland police use excessive force against protesters. It shook the foundation of what I thought it meant to be an American, to see the police violating protesters' constitutional rights and harming their bodies and wrongfully arresting them. And that protest did lead to judgments against the police. So this is not my personal opinion. This is what happened. It was terrifying, and I was undeterred. And I am so disturbed by what we are telling these youth. 10,000 people came out last night, mostly youth. With our actions through the police and with our inactions on police violence and inaccountability. I've spent the last 30 years as an activist and an organizer and an advocate, not specifically on police reform, but I felt powerless. You feel powerless against the police, no matter how righteous your cause is, and no matter how closely you're obeying the law. You can be attacked and injured and killed. Almost 30 years later, I joined City Council. City Commissioner is the second most powerful political position in the city. And I still feel powerless against the police. As soon as my team got to City Hall, we began conversations with community, with advocacy organizations, and with the police themselves to determine what we could do, because we were in the middle of intense protests following the November 2016 election. And time again, no matter how reasonable the requests, we were told it couldn't be done. Oh, that has to be bargained in the contract. Oh, that's a directive. We got nowhere with those conversations. We're not going to see an end to this until we get somewhere. These protesters want action, and we are not giving it to them. So, I don't want to be cynical about police. I know there are many good officers in the force. I saw those images of officers taking the knee. If you're not open to change, if you're not calling out misconduct, if you're not standing with us against racism, don't take the knee. it is a disservice and an insult to every person who has died from police violence and to the people that have suffered real repercussions for taking the knee. The Geneva Convention banned the use of tear gas. I think we should too. I am absolutely horrified by what I saw last night. And it is sadistic to be using tear gas in the middle of a public health crisis that's attacking people's respiratory systems. I'm really worried about the health impacts that these protests might be having. But what I see out there is beautiful. It's an uprising, and it's a time for reckoning. And we have got to do something now.
Thank you, Commissioner Udaly. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, colleagues. Quincy Haynes, Aaron Campbell, Keaton Otis, Kendra James. We don't have enough time for me to go through all the names of people who have died at the hands of the state in Portland. I want to remind people that this protest isn't about what happened anywhere else. It's about what happens in Portland. It's about the relationships that Portlanders have with people who are sworn to protect and serve them. I want the community to know I see you. The most beautiful sight I'd ever seen was the Burnside Bridge last night. What we know over the last 5 days is that there are people that are standing up for justice. They're demanding it. They are requiring more of their elected leaders. But then, as has happened every night since the protest has started, there is a small group of people who are intent on doing damage to our city, to our values. They're attempting to be disruptors to the real issue that Portlanders are confronting. I share Commissioner Udaly's concern about we are in the midst of a pandemic. We know that it causes respiratory distress. And we know that as we see more and more people showing up to protest, those people are putting their health at risk. And that risk is going to be exacerbated by tear gas and other chemical elements. We have an obligation to find out what the impact of those chemical weapons are on protesters, especially at the height of a pandemic. I will be moving forward legislation to take real action now. Before we pass our budget, I will be asking you, my colleagues, to join me in removing some of what we know are the most racially unequal systems that we have within the Portland Police Bureau. I will be asking you to join me in doing away with the gun violence reduction team. I will be asking you to join me in doing away with school resource officers. I will be asking you to join me in doing away with transit police. I'm also going to ask you to join me in making sure that we provide training to Portland police officers to make sure that everyone who encounters a police officer does not have to be in fear that they won't make it home that night to their family. This is an epidemic that has impacted this community in the whole 30 years I've lived here. This is not new. And so for people who are shocked that this is now happening, this has been the life of African Americans in the United States since we arrived. I'm going to ask you, colleagues, to look into your souls and join me in making sure that we can send a strong message to the community, that we hear them, and that we also believe that everyone, deserves to be treated with respect and dignity in our city. And I want you to publicly affirm that you will work with me to make sure that we can remove the fear that police officers have of Black bodies and the fear that Black bodies have of police. We have an obligation as the leadership in this city to make sure the community knows that we are hearing them loud and clear, and we're not going to put together task force and work groups and all the other fabulous things that we do to delay action. But we're going to take actions because the community has told us over and over again that these are the changes that they want, and they want these changes now. Thank you all. Mayor Wheeler, it has been a pleasure to work with you through some of the most trying times that we have had here at City Hall. And I want you to know that I am committed to continuing to work with you side by side to make sure that everyone in our community is safe and feels like that if they call 911, they can be assured that whoever arrives will not treat them based on the color of their skin, but will treat them based on the fact that they are a human in our community and they deserve whatever resources we have. Thank you all. I really appreciate you, Mayor, giving us the time, because there's no way we could have started a city council meeting today without addressing what's been happening in our community. So I thank you all, colleagues.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. Thank you, Commissioner Udaley. Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. Colleagues, we are going to read the first two items, but they have been withdrawn. Carla, can you please read 412 and 413?
Yes, sorry. 412, proclaim the city of Portland a place that does not tolerate xenophobia by condemning the rise in hate crimes, attacks, and attitudes against Asian Americans and Asian Pacific Islander communities due to the racist manipulation and polarization of the COVID-19 crisis. And 413, accept report of the New Portlanders Policy Commission COVID-19.
Thank you, Carla. And both of those items have been withdrawn for the time being. Have any items been pulled off of the consent agenda?
Yes, we've had a request for 416.
Very good. We'll do that at the end of the regular agenda. We'll now move to, please
Mayor.
on the Commissioner Fritz.
Just before we move to take the roll on consent, I just wanted to thank the New Portlanders Policy Commission and the Asian and Pacific Islander community for their sensitivity in wanting to reschedule the items that we just heard read. So thank you to the community members for showing support and solidarity.
Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. Carla, please call the roll on the remainder of the consent agenda.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Udaley,
Sorry, Mayor, I thought you were handing that off to me because that was an item I was bringing. So
I'm sorry, Commissioner Daly, why don't you go ahead and
yeah, I'll just say I had planned to introduce these items in collaboration with New Portlanders Policy Commission. One is a proclamation condemning the rise in hate that Asian American and Pacific Islander Portlanders have experienced during COVID. And the other was a special COVID report from the Commission on the need they're seeing for immigrant and refugee communities. The Commission has opted to postpone their items in light of local and national civil unrest that has focused all of us on the hate and oppression experienced by Black Americans. I know that the Commission is in solidarity with Black Portlanders, and I'm looking forward to bringing this proclamation and the report forward when the time, at a more appropriate time.
Thank you, Commissioner Daly. Carla, can you please continue the roll on the consent agenda?
And aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye, the consent agenda is adopted. We're going to move to the regular agenda, item number 418, please.
418, appoint Sam Rodriguez as an alternate to the Building Code Board of Appeal for a term to expire June 2, 2023.
Very good. And I can't see who is here to present on for.
I see Sam is here.
Yeah, I see Sam Rodriguez. You're up. Thank you, sir. Sam, are you muted? I can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Yeah, it's weird. I show you unmuted. Sam, can you do us a favor? We'll move on to 419, and why don't you log out and log back in and see if that works.
Mayor, do you see Terry Whitehill is here to speak on 418?
Oh yeah, good. Okay, Terry, can you cover for Sam? He's got some audio problems.
I can. You know, I've worked with Sam for a lot of years. He's in the past been on the board. He's a great addition to it. Have nothing but great things to say about Sam. He is really good at trying to find alternatives to make things work. I know that he really enjoys being on the board and has been in the past been a great contributor to it, and has been off for a while, and now we're bringing him back on again. So yeah, great addition.
Well, thank you, Terry and Sam. See, that's the good news is even though you can't be heard, Terry said nice things about you. I just wondered how it was going to work out if he said bad things about you and you weren't able to respond. So it sounds like we have an overwhelming endorsement. Colleagues, and any questions that you would ask of Sam, I think he'd have a real tough time answering those questions. With that, unless anybody has any strong objections, I would encourage a motion to accept the report.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hardesty and a second from Commissioner Fritz. Thank you both. Sam, I'm really sorry for the audio issue. We're all trying to muddle through this age of new technologies. Any further discussion on this item? Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty,
Thank you so much, Terry, for pitch hitting. Appreciate you being here. I vote aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz,
Thank you, Sam, for your willingness to serve. I appreciate that very much. It's a big time commitment. Aye.
Wheeler,
I'd like to extend my thanks to Sam. This is technical, the work that this particular Board of Appeals does. It requires people to step forward who have a great deal of knowledge, and we're grateful to have you, Sam. Thank you for stepping forward again. Terry, thank you for filling in as well. I vote aye. The appointment is approved. The report is accepted. Thank you. Thank you both. Carla, 419, please.
appoint Mary Sipe and reappoint Michael Wallace to the Noise Review Board for terms to expire June 1, 2023.
Very good. And just scroll down here. I'm not sure who is presenting on 419. I do not see.
Hi, this is Catherine Couch. That would be me.
Thank you, Catherine.
Sure. So yes, this is Michael Wallace's second term. He's retired. He's, let's see, I'm just reading. He's past president of the Heights Neighborhood Association, and he wants to reduce the noise that too often characterizes city life in Portland. And for our new board appointment, we have Mary Sipe, who is incredibly familiar with most everything that happens on the noise review. So the learning curve is going to be very short. This will be her first term. And she has a lot. I think she might be here to talk herself a little bit. Yeah, there she is.
Mary, you're on.
Hi, I'm here. This is a really exciting day for me. It's funny, I attended my very first Noise Review Board meeting in May of 2014, and little did I know that 6 years later, I would be sitting on that board. As most of you know, I've done a lot of work over the last 6 years with noise issues. I've really advocated for some changes in our noise code, and I've also established some really great relationships with the noise control program staff and also with the Noise Review Board members. And so I'm really, really excited about this opportunity to join and to work together to reinforce our noise code and to help protect our citizens from the health hazards of excessive noise in our community, while finding a balance with continuing to make improvements and do new developments and things like that. So I'm really excited and can't say much more.
Thank you, Mary, and we're so appreciative of your engagement on this. Thank you. Colleagues, any thoughts for Mary, or any questions that you want to raise at this particular time? If not, I'll entertain a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Hardesty moves, Commissioner Udaley seconds. Thank you both. Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Udaley,
I want to thank Michael Wallace and Mary Sipes for their willingness to serve on the Noise Review Board. Michael, thank you for your ongoing commitment to the board. I'm happy to approve you for another term. I'm also happy to approve Mary, who will be taking a long vacant position. It's critical that the board increase its membership, and I'm glad to see that happen with the appointment and reappointment of 2 residents with a history of interest, expertise, and volunteerism in working with noise. I also want to thank Catherine Cooch and Kenya Williams and Civic Life for their work with the board. I vote aye.
Fritz,
Well, thank you to the nominees for being willing to serve. The Noise Review Board meetings that I went to were always had a lot of controversy. So this is not an easy assignment, and it requires a lot of thought. And Mary has certainly been involved for many years, as she said, for 6 years as a community advocate. And so she'll now be one of the decision makers. And I wish both of them and the rest of the board all the best as they help the City Council to make the right decisions regarding noise. Aye.
Wheeler,
Thank you, Mary and Michael. And I'll just echo the sentiment of my colleagues. As far as community issues go, noise is a very heated one. There's a lot of construction going on in the city. There's a lot of noise issues related to that. It's very personal for people because it typically involves their homes, the livability of their homes, their ability to get a good night's sleep and whatnot. And so these are really, really important issues. But as the commissioners have indicated, they can also be complex issues to navigate. I appreciate that we have 2 super engaged, smart people who are willing to step forward and continue this effort in the case of Michael, or be appointed in the case of Mary. I'm really happy to vote aye. Thank you both for your service. The appointments are approved and the report is accepted. Thank you. Next up, Carla, could we read items 420 and 425 together, please?
Mm-hmm. Item 420, authorize a competitive solicitation and contract with the lowest responsible bidder and provide payment for construction of the downtown Old Town urgent sewer pipe rehabilitation project number E11212 for $2,687,510. And 425, accept bid of James W. Fowler Company for the downtown Old Town urgent sewer pipe rehabilitation project for $2,687,510.
Colleagues, I'd like to introduce items 420 and 425 together. Obviously, the downtown Old Town urgent sewer pipe rehabilitation project came before the City Council in April and it was approved. The project will improve sewer pipes that are upwards of between 100 and 150 years old and are at obvious and serious risk of failure. The authorizing ordinance is back at council due to a scrivener's error in the original ordinance. There was some language that needed to be included that was not. BES staff are available to answer any questions if you have any questions on that. And then with regard to 425 specifically, this is a procurement report that authorizes a contract with James Fowler Company for the Bureau of Environmental Services projects through April for the purpose that I just described. This is a project that's going to improve reliability and reduce the risk of pipe breakages and sewer leakage, which will in turn obviously protect the public's health, people's property, and our environment. It's my understanding that the project is scheduled to begin midsummer, July, and will be completed by the end of the year. And we have our Chief Procurement Officer, Lester Spitler, on the line to give us a brief presentation on the procurement.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. Good morning, City Council. Lester Spitler for the record, the city's Chief Procurement Officer. City Council approved ordinance number 189908 on April 1st, 2020. The engineer's estimate was $3,286,000 and the confidence level was high. Procurement Services issued the invitation to bid on April 14th with the due date of May 5th. 4 bids were received. James W. Fowler Company was the apparent low bidder and is the recommended awardee. Their bid came in at $2,687,510, which is a little more than 18% under the estimate. So we certainly always appreciate when bids come in that far under the estimate. The city's standard 20% aspirational goal for state certified subcontractor utilization applied to this solicitation, and the following is the breakdown of utilization that Fowler submitted and is committed to at this point. They are intending on self-performing 57.5% of the work. They've identified 2.47% that they intend to subcontract with state certified subcontractors in the area of concrete, cutting, flagging, and casting.
Lester, I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt you, but you cut out just as you gave the percentage when you started that second sentence.
Okay, I'll cut my video then in case that's the issue. I'll just go to audio.
That'd be helpful. Thanks, Lester.
Sure. So Fowler intends to self-perform 57.5% of the work. They've identified 42.5% that they intend to subcontract with state certified subcontractors in the areas of concrete cutting, flagging, and cast in place pipe work. Commissioner Hardesty, I know you had asked to provide previous project history with each of the contractors. And so the city had a project in 2018 with James W. Fowler Company, and that was worth a little over $4 million. And on that project, they achieved a total of 25.5% state certified subcontract utilization. And they also met the apprenticeship goal on that project. They were a little less than the goal for minority journeymen and apprentices and a little less on the female journeymen and apprentices. So I wanted to provide that information to council. James W. Fowler is located in Dallas, Oregon. They are not a state certified contractor. They have a current City of Portland business tax registration and are in full compliance with all of the city's contract requirements. BES has the funds budgeted for the project in their FY 2021 budget. I'm happy to answer any questions about the procurement process, and I know the BES project manager is in attendance as well. If there are no questions, we would recommend that you accept this report and authorize execution of the contract.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lester. My question is that you said they had a contract in 2018 for $4 million with a 25.5% utilization rate. What can you tell me that's different about the spread of utilization? You did not give me the specific demographic breakdown. What can you tell me about the difference between who the subcontractors were in 2018 and who they will be in 2020?
Sure. So the project that they had in 2018, the 25.5% utilization is broken down between disadvantaged business enterprises. They had about 891,000 go to DBEs. They had 2,800 to emerging small business, and they had 211,000 go to a woman-owned business enterprise for that project. For this project, The concrete cutting in the amount of 12,000 is going to Brothers Concrete.
Did you say 211,000? What does that mean? Say that again.
So-
2,000 or was it 200,000?
So for that 2018 project, they used an emerging small business in the amount of 2,800. It's a very small amount for that project. That was emerging small business utilization. For the women-owned business utilization, it was 211,000.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And for DBEs, it was just under 900,000. It was 891,000. And that made up the 25.5% utilization on that project.
And Lester, is it your belief that this major contractor is expanding their reach and reaching out to MWESB firms?
So Fowler also happens to have a contract that's currently being overseen by the Community Equity and Inclusion Committee. It's a joint PBOT, BES, and Water Bureau project. It's the Capital Highway project. And we just had a meeting yesterday, and they are at the point where they're planning to go out and engage subcontractors for the work. And, you know, I think we're pushing them harder than they've pushed in the past, than they've done in the past. I think, you know, a lot of contractors are just we're asking them to do more than the status quo. And so it's great because we have on the committee, we have lots of representation. And so those organizations are actively offering to help Fowler get better participation. So I'm excited to see what they can come back with at our July meeting. But I would say that so far they're showing a good faith effort. They're showing that they're serious. They're making calls. They're engaging with those certified subs, and I think, you know, they're doing more than just emailing. They're doing more than just bare minimum. So that's what
Are you collecting that data now? Are you asking them to collect that data? Because I remember our last conversation, you weren't collecting that data.
So for the outreach logs?
Yes, for the quote unquote good faith effort.
Yeah, so under a low bid situation, if they meet the goal, historically we have not asked for the outreach logs, but we are starting to ask for that. And I believe there's potential language that may be proposed for a later item that would make that official, but we are asking for that. But in those alternative delivery projects that are overseen by the CEIC, they're submitting all of their outreach. They're submitting their plan ahead of time. The committee is giving them feedback on that plan. They're identifying contractors in their memberships that, you know, have capacity and perform the scope of work, and they're being intentional about, hey, call so-and-so. I believe they have capacity, and this is right up their alley. So we will have all of that data after that process is complete. And when we come to council to ask council to authorize the construction contract for that project, we will do a very detailed presentation about everything that Fowler has done to obtain the highest amount of percentage on the project. That's a couple months out, though, at this point.
Thank you. My last question is, what was the error that we are correcting today?
Mayor Wheeler, do you want to propose that, or should I summarize that?
I'll give you the big picture, and then Lester, you can give the small. There was a paragraph of inclusive language that is required for our contracts that was accidentally excluded. Lester, maybe you can be more specific.
Commissioner Hardesty, are you asking about the error on the authorizing ordinance, or the revised language that we're going to propose for later?
The error on the authorizing ordinance.
Okay, so the error on the authorizing ordinance is it didn't specifically allow for execution of a contract upon acceptance of a chief procurement officer report. So there's standard language that goes in those authorizing ordinances, and sometimes there's a legacy template that gets resurrected that doesn't have the right language. And so from time to time, we have to come back and amend those ordinances to include that very specific language.
Thank you.
Very good. Colleagues, any further questions? Carla, is there any public testimony on either item 420 or item 425?
Sorry about that. On No one signed up for either of those.
Very good. So item 420 is a first reading of a non-emergency, I'm sorry, that's an emergency ordinance. Can you call the roll on 420?
Hardesty,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. Item 425 is a report. I will accept a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Hardesty, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Any further discussion on the report? Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the report's accepted. We'll go to item 421, please.
Accept bid of More Excavation, Inc. for the Hillsdale Crest Rainfall Derived 2 project for $4,072,044.
Colleagues, this procurement report is for the Bureau of Environmental Services for a project that will repair over 18,000 feet of sewer mains and 172 public laterals, preventing sewer backups in many homes and businesses. This report was originally scheduled for the April 29th council agenda, but I referred it back to my office due to concerns about how more construction had met the 20% aspirational goal of the subcontractor equity program. Chief Procurement Officer Lester Spitler is here to present the report, and then I have a few more comments I'd like to make before we go to public testimony. Staff from the Bureau of Environmental Services are also here to answer any questions that are specific to the project. Lester?
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. Again, for the record, Lester Spitler, the city's chief procurement officer. City Council approved authorizing ordinance 29821 on January 8th, 2020. The engineer's estimate at the time was $5,178,885. The confidence level was high. Procurement Services issued the invitation to bid on February 17th, 2020. There was a mandatory pre-bid conference and 8 firms attended. Bids were due on March 19th when we received 3 bids. More Excavation submitted the lowest responsive bid in the amount of $4,072,044, which is about 27% below the estimate. The city's 20% aspirational goal for state certified subcontractor utilization applied to this solicitation, and the following is a breakdown of the utilization that Moore submitted. They intend to self-perform 51.5% of the work, and they've identified 48.5% that they intend to subcontract to state certified subcontractors in the areas of concrete cutting, cast in place pipe, pipe lining, pest control, and manhole rehabilitation. I want to talk about Moore's past performance. So since 2016, they've had 4 projects with the city of Portland, ranging from $590,000 up to about $6.5 million. Their overall achievement on the projects, for one project, for the 600.
Lester, I would like to have the individual. I want the details. They've had 4 projects.
Yes.
You can give me the demographic breakdown for all 4. I would be greatly appreciative.
Yes, I'm going to do that. Yeah, so for one project, it was about $600,000. They had a dismal percentage utilization at the end of the project of 2%. That was performed by a woman-owned business enterprise.
What year was this?
That was 2016.
Thank you.
They did achieve the 20% apprenticeship utilization rates. They achieved a 15% minority utilization in journeyman and apprentices and a 6% female utilization in journeyman and apprentice, or journey person and apprentice, sorry. The next project they had was in 2016 as well. It was $4.3 million, and they achieved a 26.5% utilization. That's broken down by disadvantaged business enterprises in the amount of $362,000, emerging small business in the amount of $49,000 and women-owned business enterprise in the amount of $731,000.
Can you tell me if the women-owned family business is a family member of the contractor?
I'm working off of a spreadsheet that we've compiled. I don't have that information off the top of right now. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
The next project they had in 2017, it was $3.5 million, and they met that. They achieved a 42.15% utilization on that contract.
And what type of utilization was that?
Hold on a minute. I hit a bunch of columns because there was a lot of information on this spreadsheet. Fortunately, it looks like that was a women-owned business enterprise as well, and I don't have the specifics. I can get back to you on that.
It's just really important information. Thank you, Lester.
Okay. The last of the 4 projects was in 2017, and it closed in 2019. It was $6.5 million. They achieved a 10.7% utilization on the project, and that was through the use of disadvantaged business enterprises in the amount of about $600,000, emerging small business in the amount of $71,000, and minority business enterprise in the amount of $26,000.
So I'm seeing a trend here, and I see a trend that it doesn't appear that this particular contractor is expanding their knowledge of the subcontractors that are available in our community. So we are talking from 2016 to 2020, and we are talking over $15 million in public resources. And one of them was pretty dismal, the one that was at 2% of utilization. What is the kind of what is the kind of analysis that happens at the end of each of these contracts that encourages contractors to do better?
So in the past year, we've put in place a post-project evaluation form that the project managers fill out and our compliance folks fill out, and it has the end of project utilization rates. And we've started to give that to the pre-qualification board when contractors' application comes up for pre-qualification, so that we're taking that into consideration as we determine whether or not a contractor is responsible. And so, I think we've had conversations at council about how do we look back historically at their, how are they aligning with the city's goals? And I think, having this past history allows us to do exactly that. And I'll also say that we invited more excavation in for a meeting last fall, and Derek was in attendance, as well as Jamal and Marshall, and I believe someone from Commissioner Fritz's office. And we told them that they need to do more. And they did respond with a letter. They started to attend more certified subcontractor association groups. They started to develop more relationships, but honestly, they could do more. And I think I talk to them, every so often, and we're constantly asking what they're doing. And it's about the relationships, because it's not just about, emailing a bunch of firms and expecting them to get back to you. It's about establishing relationships. And even if a certified subcontractor, isn't selected for a job, reach back out to them afterwards and sort of help them understand where their bid either came in high or wasn't competitive. We're not asking them to divulge, confidential information, but it's about those relationships, it's about that extra effort, so that when they do reach out to that subcontractor and the next time, they understand that Moore wants them to work on the job, and that they know that they have a partner and a prime contractor, and not somebody that's just reaching out to meet a goal. So I think that's a relationship we're trying to work on. And I would say that I think collectively between my staff and I, we would say that we've seen more from them, but it took that council meeting to really get them to step up their game. So I certainly appreciate the leadership from your offices and having that meeting and following up and setting that message. and we're trying to work with them to get them to do more.
And my last question on this particular one, because we're just at the beginning of several of these kind of contracts. I'll rephrase the question. Let me ask this question, and maybe this is a Robert Taylor question. Is the city of Portland obligated when we get responses back that achieve a 2% utilization goal to fulfill that contract? I would see that as an unresponsive contract. So I'm wondering why we approve contracts with a 2% when we say our aspirational goal is 21. I don't know if that's a you question, Lester, or if that's a Robert Taylor question.
I can just jump in and say that historically, we measure responsiveness based on the good faith effort.
But if you weren't tracking a good faith effort, then you would have no idea of knowing whether or not they made a good faith effort.
Well, anytime they don't meet the percentage, we scrutinize their outreach efforts to make sure they did meet the standard of a good faith effort.
And so what did you learn in 2016 when they used 2% utilization?
Well, I mean, since we presented that contract to council, we determined that they met the good faith effort at the time. I'd have to go back and look at the paperwork specifically to see how they met that good faith effort. But
as would I would love to know that too. I would love to know how somebody has 2% and we are told that they have met the good faith effort. I really need to know the answer to that question.
Okay. I will just say that our good faith effort requires contractors not just to reach out, it requires them to get responses, which includes emails back, preferably, because that's what we can verify. But, you know, if the prime contractor can document a phone call conversation or a one-on-one meeting they had with a subcontractor, that works too. But if we don't see that they got 3 responses in each subcontract that they reached out for, we don't consider that meeting the good faith effort.
And so do you verify, do you go and call those subcontractors and ask them if they got a call from a contractor that has put them down as a good faith effort?
Yeah, in some cases we do. We don't have the capacity to do that with everyone, but in some cases we do.
I did say that was my last question, but there was 3 questions ago. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Commissioner Hardesty, I've learned over the years that when I say this is my last question or this is the last thing I'm going to say, it's like a very powerful self-jinx potion. It never turns out that way.
I share that. Thank you.
Very good. Colleagues, does anybody at the moment have any further questions for Lester on this issue? If not, we'll go to public testimony. Carla, do you have people signed up for public testimony on this item?
This is a report.
Oh, good point. My bad. Sorry. So I do have, I'll read my comments during the vote. I'll take a motion in a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Hardesty moves, Commissioner Udaley seconds. Carla, please call the roll on the report.
Hardesty.
This is not acceptable in my mind that we continue to have major contractors that I believe are using the system that we have put in place to make opportunity available for a wide range of community members to be able to reap the benefits of public contracting. As all of my colleagues know, from the day I got here, I have asked for specifics about who is benefiting from public dollars and who is not benefiting from public dollars. I am committed to making sure that as we move forward, we are expanding opportunity for community members to be able to access public contracts. I will expect our purchasing department to not just take people's word for doing a good faith effort. I expect that there will be written confirmation that good faith efforts have in fact been taken and achieved. I will also expect purchasing to ensure that they are doing spot checks to ensure that we are getting accurate information. I am disappointed in any contractor who has had 5 years of feeding at the public trough through public contracting, that they are not able to build deeper relationships in minority contracting communities and in women communities. And if we have public contractors who are unwilling to do the work necessary to build those deep relationships, they should not be entitled to public dollars. Therefore, I will vote no on this contract. I vote no.
You, Daly?
I want to thank Robert Taylor and the City Attorney's Office for briefing my team on council considerations for the procurement report. I share Commissioner Hardesty's frustration and just want to add that we need to reform our procurement goals and process if we're going to get any different results. I do understand that these projects vary from project to project, season to season. It may legitimately be impossible to meet the goal, but like Commissioner Hardesty said, we're seeing contractors that are just consistently coming in under the goal over and over again, regardless of the nature of the contract or the time of year. And we need to be able to, hi, Mayor.
Yeah, sorry.
We need to be
strategizing.
We need to be able to better compel them to meet these goals, but we also need to do work with building capacity in the community. And the mayor's still laughing and his giant face is on the screen and really distracting me from my comments. So I'm just going to vote reluctantly aye.
Fritz?
So I think we all agree that we want to achieve better numbers. And I think we agree that we don't like some of the policies and regulations that we have in place right now. So the way to change that is to change the policies and the regulations. And the mayor and I supported continuing to put money into that by not necessarily having enough money to do a disparity study, but keeping the conversation going with the money that is in the budget for next year. And Lester Spitler has repeatedly answered our questions and expressed his commitment to improving the numbers. That's one of the reasons that he was hired, and I have confidence that he's able to do that. So again, you don't change the goalpost. You can't move the goalpost in the middle of a project, and it's not legal. So, and there already is a way to do a different process, and that's by doing the longer, more expensive construction management general contractor bidding process. But with low bid, there are rules as to what we can refuse and what we can, what we have to approve. And so, yeah, I was, as Lester noted, I was very aware that Moore has not achieved our aspirational goal on many occasions and have been pushing them to do so, and they have started to make some improvement. So I believe that we're sending a clear message to all of our contractors that we expect them to do better. And in the meantime, this contract is approvable. Aye.
Wheeler?
Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge that when it comes to this technology, you would think I would perfect this at some point. It sort of reminds me, my daughter and I have been playing a virtual mini golf game. We're in separate locations during the week. And she beats me every time because she knows I don't know how to perfect the technology. So I keep hitting the ball backwards and things like that. And presiding over a virtual council session is no different. But at least this time I'm unmuted when I want to be unmuted. And so I apologize for that. This contract, as I mentioned up front, this is for the Bureau of Environmental Services. It's for critical infrastructure. It's about 18,500 feet of sewer infrastructure. It's at risk of failing. Obviously, we need to move forward with the project, and I support it. But Commissioner Hardesty is not wrong on this issue, and I'm hearing the same frustration from Commissioner Udalys and Commissioner Udalys and Commissioner Fritz. Companies who undertake a contract with the city of Portland are expected to undertake significant good faith efforts to meet our aspirational goals of the subcontractor equity program. And this isn't just a hurdle we ask companies to meet. This is actually, in a way, critical to shared economic prosperity, which has been a goal for us for a long time. And these are public dollars that are being expended for public projects. And we demand a lot because the public expects a lot, and we should. There are changes that we're making that are positive. Changes we're making to the subcontractor equity program are necessary, but there's more we need to do to fix some of the loopholes that currently exist. And my colleagues and I all recognize that larger changes are going to be needed to the city's procurement policies and strategies to truly move towards equitable outcomes. And I want to first of all acknowledge the close collaboration of all the council offices and our staffs, and they've been working really hard with Lester and Lester's team. And Lester, I want to thank you and your team for that, to explore other policy and program options to help us meet our goals for increasing equity in contracting. I'm also going to say this. I believe that there are some contractors, who understand what the legal threshold is that they have to meet in order for the contract to be approvable. This is such a case. And I'm also just going to be blunt. All of us sent staff members to more excavation for the purpose of trying to secure even aspirational or values-based commitments, and they thumb their noses at our staffs. And we're not happy about that because it shows a lack of alignment of values. This is not just a business proposition. This is not just a contract. This is where the city council seeks to use public projects and public resources in a fair and equitable manner. And that's the whole point of having a procurement process. And so I'm going to continue, I will vote for this because we need the infrastructure project, but we cannot continue to have this conversation under these terms every single time a contract comes forward. And so I'm committing with my colleagues, we will close these loopholes and we will find ways to make sure that we are holding our contractors accountable in the same manner and to the same degree that the public is holding us accountable as a city council on these projects. So today the report passes, but I think the public is hearing loudly and clearly the frustration on the part of this council to do better. We're going to do better. We want to do better, and I'm committed to it. My colleagues are. So thank you for that. Next item is 422, please, Carla.
Accept bid of more excavation for the Northwest Thurman Street Sewer Reconstruction Project for $4,171,393.
This procurement report is for a Bureau of Environmental Services project that will reconstruct, repair, and replace public sewer infrastructure in the Willamette Heights neighborhood of Northwest Portland. These improvements will relieve basement sewer backups at 31 properties and increase the capacity of the 100-year-old sewer system to handle combined sewage and stormwater. Chief Procurement Officer Lester Spitler is here on this report, and I assume many of the issues will remain the same. Lester.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. Again, for the record, Lester Spitler, the city's Chief Procurement Officer. City Council approved Ordinance 189790 on December 11th, 2019. At the time, the engineer's estimate was $4,680,000 and the confidence level was high. Procurement Services issued the invitation to bid on February 26th, 2020. We had a mandatory pre-bid conference and 7 firms attended. Bids were due on March 19th, 2020, and we received 3. More Excavation is the apparent low bidder and is the recommended awardee. Their bid came in at $4,171,393, which is almost 11% under the estimate. The city's 20% aspirational goal for state certified subcontractor utilization applied to this solicitation. The following is the breakdown of utilization that Moore They intend to self-perform 78.81% of the work. They've identified more than 20% of the work that they intend to subcontract with state certified firms. And there's a little less than 1% of the work that they've identified non-certified subcontractors for. I'm going to walk through the breakdown of subcontractors that they've identified this work. The first is a flagging contractor. They are owned by a Hispanic female, and they are a disadvantaged and minority-owned and emerging small business enterprise. Brothers Concrete in saw cutting. They're a Native American male-owned firm, a minority business enterprise. Cutter Construction, they are a disadvantaged and a woman-owned business enterprise. They'll be performing trucking on the contract. Igami Construction is a DBE and an ESB. It's Asian Pacific female-owned. They'll be doing the signage. Iron Horse LLC is the disadvantaged woman-owned business enterprise that'll be performing the cast-in-place sewer and storm drain work. Kodiak Pacific is a woman-owned business enterprise. They'll be performing the paving. Miller Factors, woman-owned business enterprise performing landscaping. Pest Solutions LLC, an emerging small business performing rodent control. And lastly, Taylor Transport, a woman-owned business enterprise performing trucking. In Moore's original post-bid documentation, they weren't able to identify a concrete subcontractor during the bidding timeframe. They invited to bid and followed up via phone call with 12 co-bid state-certified firms, including women-owned business enterprises, minority business enterprises, and emerging small businesses. The responses that they received at the time was 7 didn't respond. 1 said they're not bidding. 1 said they were too busy. 1 actually said the city of Portland is too hard to work for. 1 said they were undecided at the time. And 1 said that they were bidding, but then they decided not to. Subsequent to submitting their bid and submitting the documentation, they followed up with one of the subcontractors because the quote that they got from a non-certified sub for concrete was what they thought was uncompetitive. So they were able to get in touch with one of the subcontractors, D&D Concrete and Utilities. They reached back out. D&D Concrete is a emerging small business, but they were able to work with them to get a quote that was within a reasonable amount. And so their performance is not included in the 20.838%, but they do intend to use them. So I wanted to mention that. I described Moore's past performance on the previous item. I'm happy to do that again. But if there's any questions, I know the BES project team is in attendance, and I'm happy to certainly answer any questions as well.
Colleagues, any question on this item? If not, sorry.
Yeah, I won't ask the same questions again because it is a consistent theme through the contracting that I have seen in front of City Council. But I will just say for the record that I am appreciative that you, Mayor, have drawn a line in the sand and said that we are going to do better. I am committed to making sure that before this year is out, we will never have another contract in front of us that does not exceed our goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion in a second.
I'll move.
Thanks.
Second.
Commissioner Hardesty moves. Commissioner Daly seconds. Thanks, both of you. Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty,
No.
Daly,
Aye.
Fritz,
Well, according to the impact statement, this does meet the goals at 20.38%. Aye.
Wheeler,
Yeah, I'm much happier about this one. I vote aye. The report is accepted. 423, please.
accept bid of West Tech Construction, Inc. for the Southwest Nato Parkway, Southwest Salmon Street to I-405 improvement project for $8,648,803.
And this is a PBOT project. Lester, I'll turn it over to you unless Commissioner Daly had any opening comments on this one. Go ahead, Lester.
Thank you again, Lester Spitler, for the record, the city's chief procurement officer.
Lester, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could we keep the remarks a little briefer, just because I want to be respectful to the 10:30 time certain as well?
Of course, sure. The authorizing ordinance was approved last September. The engineer's estimate was a little under 9 million and the confidence level was moderate. We issued the solicitation on February 26th. Bids were due on April 16th. 4 bids were received. West Tech Construction submitted the lowest bid in the amount of $8,648,803.02, which is 3.4% under the estimate. West Tech intends to self-perform a little under 31% of the work. They've identified 12.5% to subcontract to state certified subcontractors and 56.5% to non-certified subcontractors. I talked to West Tech yesterday, and the vice president of the company is on the line to answer any more questions, but I did want to go into their good faith efforts. I'll try to make it brief. So while they did not meet the goal, they did provide a call log with 13 scopes of work listed. They provided backup documentation for outreach responses for all certified firms. They did receive 3 written responses in each of the 13 scopes of work. Based on staff's review of their documentation and the bids that they received, it was determined that they did meet the good faith effort. Additionally, they have 2 first-tier subs that are not certified that will be contracting with certified firms as second-tier subcontractors. So that amount of work is $130,000, and so that brings their unofficial participation up to 14% versus 12%. So I do think that that's noteworthy, even though it doesn't officially count within our policy. I also wanted to add that West Tech, in their outreach to find certified firms, they had identified a woman-owned business enterprise in the paving scope of work, and they expected to get a quote from that business, but when the due date came and went, they didn't get a bid, or it didn't get a quote. So they followed up with that contractor, and it just so happened that contractor switched to a new system, and the quotes that they had sent out got stuck and they didn't actually get delivered. So had they received a quote from Kodiak Pacific Construction to perform the paving work, they would have achieved the 20% goal. And I just thought that was, that's one of those nuances that I think maybe happens from time to time, but I thought that was noteworthy. West Tech has not had a recent project with the city within the last 3 to 5 years. I know they constructed the first phase of Nato. So they told me they put their heart and soul in responding to this bid because they wanted to do both phases. As I said, Kless, their vice president, is in attendance in case any questions come up, but we do recommend that you accept this report and authorize execution of the contract. West Tech is not a certified contractor, but they are in compliance with the city's contracting requirements.
Thank you, Lester. Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you. I would like to hear from the Vice President of the company. I really appreciate you making the effort to be here today, and I presume that you've heard some of the conversation so far. So it would be helpful to hear from your perspective what the challenges can be in meeting the shared goals.
Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Some of the issues that we have in dealing with specifically this project, the Nato Parkway project, is a very difficult project to perform. And so one of the issues that we have, because the good faith efforts relies on the Cobit system, we have to go to the state website. And I feel that one of the issues is that we're missing some MWD ESB participation from the Portland metropolitan area because they don't have a Cobit number. They're not on the list. So when we go to reach out to some of these people, the scope is too big for them. Some of them don't know why they're on the list. But those are things that become difficult, and we offer to, give them a set of plans, walk through the plans and stuff. So again, that's an issue that I think that we can improve on. I think that the ones that are, there are people that are just confused as to, like I said, as to why they're on the list. We're limited to that list, and I think that's a downfall. I know that there's other firms in the Portland area that we can't really reach out to. I do want to talk to the positives about this system, though. Some of the positives are because of this intricate project and how difficult it was put together. I was actually doing outreach clear to Eugene and Medford. I think one was even to Ashland. And I actually developed a relationship with two of the subcontractors that I reached out to in a scope of work that they're not even listed for. One was in pump stations and was interested in finding a partner in the Portland area to perhaps do some BES work. I just happened to have a private job that I needed some help with, and that was a great communication between that company and us. The other one was for a structural concrete wall subcontractor. Wasn't listed in their forte, but again, I made contacts on this from people just by doing this significant outreach. So I think there are some positives that we could do on this. This system we have does have limitations. I have been doing this for 22 years. I would be very happy to be involved in a workshop to help improve this system.
Well, thank you very much. That's really helpful.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, class. I had a question for you. You said that you had a couple of subcontractor potentials who were not on the city's list. I don't know why the city would not. Actually, if you are able to identify minority and women-owned firms, that whether they're on the city's list or not, I don't understand why the city would not allow you to utilize them.
Thank you, Commissioner. According to the program that is set in place right now, in order to enter them on the good faith effort form, they have to have a Cobit number, which is a state number. So what the contractors do is we have to go to the website and look up firms according to their Cobit number. We just happen to know, and off the top of my head, I apologize, I'm a little bit nervous. I can't think of the name of the company, but we do know some MWD ESP firms who either were on the list before and they decided to get off because it was too difficult for them, or they're just not on the list because they don't know how. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does, class. And I want to thank you for your offer to work with us, because we will need major contractors who are as committed as the city is to ensure that we are providing equitable opportunity. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate your willingness to do that. I have myself actually questioned why the city only uses 25% of the contractors that actually exist. The state list is not a magic thing. It is just simply the people that went through the enormous paperwork to get the state certification. And I continue to remind my colleagues that that only helps white majority contractors. It does absolutely nothing for minority and women-owned firms. So we have a lot of work to do before we can pat ourselves on the back about our equitable contracting. And class, you're going to be a great resource for us as we move forward. So again, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Any questions on this item? Carla, I'll entertain a motion in a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hardesty, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty,
I hope that we have many more contractors, primary contractors in the city of Portland like CLES than some of the other ones that I have been looking at lately. I know that there are majority contractors who are committed to the same equity goals that the city has. And any of them who are listening to this broadcast today, please contact us, because we need you to be the ones helping us fix this system. And I will just put on the record that I don't think the state's certification list is any magic solution to the problem. I vote aye. I am happy to vote aye for this contract, because CLES, I believe you when you say you are committed. I did not have that faith in many other contracts that come in front of us. Thank you.
Daly.
Well, I want to thank Klaus for being here today and sharing his reflections with us. I was, of course, disappointed that West Tech didn't reach the 20% utilization rate, but I understand that this isn't a pattern with them, that there were unique challenges with this, just the nature of this project made it tough to get to 20%, as well as the issue with the subcontractors system that we heard about earlier from Lester. So I'm happy to support it. I will say that we need some kind of vetting process for WDSB businesses, because anyone could claim to be one if there wasn't. And that's the purpose that the Cobit system serves. My office has worked with numerous NWDSB businesses to help them through that process, but it sounds like there are some real challenges with it. It either needs to be fixed or replaced. I vote aye.
Fritz?
Well, as we know, it's sometimes difficult for the City of Portland to get the state to fix its systems, but perhaps we could add a second one for Portland certified firms. I mean, that's the kind of thing that we need to discuss. Thank you, Class Woodward, for coming in to tell us some of the challenges. I suspect that in the previous 2 or 3 contracts that we've discussed this morning, that had their principals shown up and explained that there may be similar difficulties in terms of the state system and the clunky thing that we've got in place right now. I appreciate your willingness to help us figure out a better way forward. Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. Contract is approved. Item 424, please.
Accept bid of Goodfellow Brothers LLC for the Road 10 Mileposts 6.2 to 8.2 improvements project for $2,773,570.
Lester?
Good morning. Lester Spitler for the record, the city's chief procurement officer. City Council approved the authorizing ordinance in September. The engineer's estimate was $2.2 million and the level of confidence was moderate. We issued the invitation to bid on March 27th with bids due on April 30th. And we received 8 bids, which is a great showing. We don't typically receive that many responses, so we were really happy about that. And there was less than a 3% difference between the 2 lowest bidders. So we feel really good about the low bid that we got from Goodfellow Brothers. It is over the estimate. It's about 24% over the estimate. But like I said, with the 3% difference between the 2 lowest bidders, that gives us confidence that we got a good low price. Goodfellow Brothers intends to self-perform 75% of the work. They've identified a little more than 20% of the work that they intend to use certified subcontractors for. Very quickly, I'll review that. They intend to use Brothers Concrete for concrete cutting. Brothers Concrete is a minority-owned business enterprise. They're Native American, male-owned. For erosion control, they intend to use Fox Erosion Control Landscaping. That's a disadvantage and a woman-owned business enterprise. It's Caucasian, female-owned. Kodiak Pacific Construction for road construction and paving. They're a women-owned business enterprise and Caucasian, female-owned. And lastly, Taylor Transport for trucking, a woman-owned business enterprise and Caucasian, female-owned. Goodfellow Brothers has had a recent project with the city of Portland. It started in 2018 and ended in March of 2020. It was a PBOT project. The project was just under $5 million. And by the end of the project, they achieved a 30.34% certified subcontractor utilization. The subcontractors were certified as disadvantaged business enterprises in just under $1 million and emerging small business enterprises in just under $600,000. That's the only project that we have recently that has closed.
Excuse me, were there no minority businesses in that contract?
There was none used. That's correct.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, this is a Water Bureau project in the Bull Run watershed to repaving the roads. And I just wanted to go into why it's higher than the estimate. The estimate was under on the cost. And thank you to Chief Engineer Teresa Elliott for this information. The estimate was under on the cost of hauling the rock to the watershed. All the items that included rock were higher than with the estimate, with the exception of the channel gravel. The walls have lightweight fill and very limited rock. the estimate. And some of the larger diameter culverts were higher than the estimate because of the greater depths that other culverts in the watershed and the number of elliptical pipes installed in the state for the use in the estimate. So Teresa concurs that considering the number of bids received, it's unlikely we would get different results rebidding the contract. I will note that Kodiak Pacific was one of the firms that was discussed in the previous item, and that they had not been able to get back to that contract bid in the allowed time. So it's clear that there perhaps are limited numbers of firms who meet the state standards or are on the state's list, and that we also need to continue the work that we've been doing in supporting additional firms in becoming certified. So I appreciate the work that's been done on this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty moves. Commissioner Daly seconds. Thank you, Commissioner. Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty,
I'm just gonna put my objection on the table once again. We can do better. We must do better. I vote no.
Daly,
Aye.
Fritz,
Well, again, this does meet the aspirational goal. It's over the 20%, and so it's clear that some of my colleagues don't like the rules, and we need to change the rules. But in the meantime, this contract meets those rules, and I appreciate that. Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye. The report is accepted. Now we'll go back to item number 414, and that is the time certain item. Carla, if you could read 414, please.
Extend final inspection deadline for qualifying for a system development charge expiration for certain accessory dwelling units from June 30, 2020 to September 30, 2020, and establish options if that deadline is missed.
Colleagues, the Bureau of Development Services is here to request the council adopt a resolution that will extend the deadline to qualify for an exemption to pay system development charges, sometimes called SDCs, for homeowners trying to complete construction of their accessory dwelling unit projects. In 2016, we extended the existing SDC exemption for auxiliary dwelling units called ADUs until June 30th of 2020. This applied to permit applications with intake dates from 2016 through July 31st of 2018. As of March 30th, 2020, BDS records showed there were 223 outstanding permits that were eligible for this SDC waiver that had not yet reached the point in their project where they can get their final inspections approved. BDS staff has been working with these customers to get their ADU projects completed and their inspections finalized. The COVID-19 crisis created difficulty for homeowners to get work done by their contractors in a timely way, and it obviously caused some impacts to the services that are delivered by the Bureau. For that reason, the reason for that is, of course, they temporarily limited residential inspections and temporarily postponed non-critical inspections that required inspectors to enter an occupied home, a reasonable precaution during COVID. Many of the ADU projects include converting existing living space in a home, so these projects have been impacted by the inspection limitations. Homeowners embarked on these projects assuming that they could get them constructed and completed before June 30th, 2020. They counted on the additional or on the existing SDC waiver. They obviously did not anticipate delays resulting from the COVID-19 crisis, and they had not budgeted in many cases for the additional expenses of paying the SDCs. So in order to help homeowners get their ADU permits finalized, this resolution before us would extend the date for getting the permit finalized for an additional 3 months to September 30th, 2020. if the council approves this proposal for a 3-month extension to qualify for the SDC exemption, the second question then becomes how to handle those applicants who don't yet meet the deadline. The proposal before you is to give them 2 different options. The homeowner can either, number 1, pay the SDCs that are due, or number 2, they can record a covenant agreeing not to use the ADU or any other structure on the property as an accessory short-term rental unit for 10 years. This mirrors the current requirement for SDC waivers for ADUs permitted with intake dates after July 31st of 2018. So with that, I will turn this over to David Kuhnhausen with the Bureau of Development Services. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is David Kuhnhausen. I'm the Permitting Services Division Manager at the Bureau of Development Services. I want to acknowledge that I'm joined today by 2 of my colleagues, BDS Division or Residential Inspections Division Manager Dave Tebow and BDS Code and Policy Analyst Nancy Thorington, the latter of whom was instrumental in developing this resolution that you're seeing today. As Mayor Wheeler stated, the resolution before you is to take the extenuating circumstances that we as a society and specifically related to these customers have had to deal with regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. And it has directly impacted 2 major aspects of the construction process, one of which is that contractors and subcontractors having to adhere to social distancing on construction sites has obviously slowed down progress on those sites. And that's definitely the case on large sites where people are working on multiple floors or there's a large floor plan to spread out. But for these ADUs that are a maximum of 800 square feet, it really only allows 1, maybe 2 people to be in that space at any given time. So that significantly limits how quickly projects can be done on these, or how quickly work can be done on these projects. The second aspect is that, as Mayor Wheeler stated, our inspections were temporarily limited while we evaluated how we were going to be doing our work with new regulations in place and then getting those tools and processes in place to deal with the pandemic. And I'm going to pass it over to Dave Tebow in a minute, just so he can elaborate from the inspection side as to what his staff have had to deal with in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic and how they do their work. But as an update, Mayor Wheeler indicated that as of March 30th, there were 223 outstanding permits. And just as an update, as of Monday, June 1st, there are actually 203. So in those 2 months, 20 of these ADU permits have been finalized. And that may not seem like significant progress, but given the conditions, that does seem like, from our standpoint, there is still work being done. It is being done slower, but there are still a number of projects that are ongoing. And just to elaborate a little bit more, there's different steps in the process. So there's different phases that a permit is under. So you can be under review, meaning you don't have the ability to then do that work. But the projects that are under inspection, there are 128 of them currently. And those 128 permits have had progress done in the last 6 months, meaning a BDS inspector has gone on site and evaluated some scope of work, meaning those customers are continuing to progress with their projects. And just as a little bit of background, BDS has been conducting outreach to customers to let them know that they have a timeline to meet, and customers have requested an extension on that. And up until the COVID-19 pandemic really started to affect us, we've been saying, no, this is the end of, this ordinance only allows for so long for these projects to be ongoing. However, as work grinded to a halt on many of these projects, we saw a significant uptick in calls from customers who stated that work was not taking place or was taking place very, very slowly. And I believe there's a number of public testimony that I want to make sure I allow time for today for customers who will have been directly impacted by this. But just to elaborate a little bit more, a number of these customers who have called have said that should those SDC fees be added to the permits, they would need to either revise their permit to remove that aspect from the scope of work or completely abandon the project altogether, meaning just cancel everything and start fresh. I'll be the first to acknowledge that a number of these projects won't be completed at either by the June deadline or the September deadline, but those customers who have applied for and were issued a building permit to construct an ADU, we're asking that the city acknowledges that there were or are issues outside of their control that have made it very difficult, if not impossible, to really complete those projects by the deadline. So as Mayor Wheeler stated, there are a couple of different options for customers who, should this resolution be approved, still do not meet that September 30th deadline. And those being that those mirroring the current ADU customers, and that they can pay those SDC fees, which would range from $10,000 to $15,000 per project, or they can sign that covenant with the Office of Management and Finance that states that they cannot rent any room or structure on their site as a short-term rental for a period of 10 years. The latter of these options keeps those ADUs in the rental pool within the city and thereby assists with the current housing crisis. So with that, I want to see if Dave Tebow, the residential inspections manager, has any input from his side that he'd like to add.
David, before you move on, could we get a question in here from Commissioner Hardesty, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you, David. My question is just simply, just knowing where we are right now with COVID-19, isn't this extension a little short?
That's a great question, Commissioner Hardesty, and I would agree. It does continue to make, without knowing what this summer and fall are going to add in terms of, number of cases that we see or restrictions being lifted, it will be difficult. However, we struggled to find a suitable timeline that would make sense to all parties involved, those being the bureaus as well that would like to collect fees on these projects. So for that reason, we have elected to put a 3-month extension on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can continue. Thanks, David.
Okay. Dave, do you want to add?
Yes, I'm here, David. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners. Just briefly, I'd like to speak to the aspect of the impact of the global pandemic on the construction industry in general. Due to the governor's social distancing rules and the construction industry's willingness to continue to provide service to whatever extent possible, they were really forced to reinvent how they do their jobs. The result of that was the fact that their work slowed down substantially in an effort to keep the social distancing and to work through problems of how to do their work and maintain that social distance. Basically they had the opportunity to continue to work, which they appreciated. But they had to do it within these confines. And so that really restricted their capabilities of servicing existing clients that they had because of the work slowage, and to take on any new customers that might need work done. And I just thought that was an important consideration to bring to the council's, to the council to consider during their deliberation of this. In addition, even we've been continuing to do our inspections to some extent, like David alluded to, that we're not going into occupied buildings anymore. We're doing our best to utilize technology such as, video, FaceTime, and Skype to complete those inspections, but not every inspection can be done that way. And even on the buildings that are standalone, we're able to go in and do those inspections, new construction or isolated construction types of the building where we can go in and do those inspections. We had required that the contractors remove all of the work personnel while we do those inspections, which means that all work stops even while we're doing our inspections. They've really done their best to try and accommodate, but it's just under the present conditions and the parent paradigm, we're not being able to complete the work. And I just wanted to bring that to the council's attention.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Any questions before we go to public testimony? Not seeing any. Very good. Carla, how many people do we have signed up for public testimony? Carla, you muted?
Sorry. Yes, we have one person.
How many people are signed up?
One person, Benjamin Weisel.
All right, Benjamin, you're up. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hi, good morning. My audio has been cutting in and out, so hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
Yep.
Thank you so much for allowing me to speak a little bit about it. It's encouraging that you guys are willing to look at extensions of these permits. I'm actually a contractor and I build ADUs, and it's never been a problem to meet a deadline. I've been very proud of my record of building these beautiful little places in the back of people's homes. But currently my customers have lost their jobs, and I was not able to finish a couple of jobs because of that. And we're just running into money problems. We can't finish this thing really by the June 30th deadline, just due to money. We've had constraints with other contractors getting in here to do some work. The plumber and the electrician have slowed down on other jobs, and that's slowed down this job. So the timeline has stretched out for that as well, but mostly it just comes down to being able to afford to build it. I've really been proud of being able to build these ADUs in Portland. I think it's so neat that we're able to do it, and I'm proud of you guys for spearheading all that. So I don't know. I just hope an extension, I think, would relieve a lot of stress.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And thank you for coming in and sharing your personal perspective on this.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions for staff before we move to a vote on the resolution?
Mayor, I wonder if the presenters would entertain a friendly amendment that would allow us to extend this beyond 3 months. I am concerned that, not knowing what we don't know about how COVID is going to be impacting us, especially since the major demonstrations that have shown up. We are a week out from knowing what the impact of all the mass demonstrations are. And I'm just concerned that if we only do the extension for 3 months, that in 2 months, someone will be back asking for another extension. And so I'm wondering if doing a 6-month extension would make more sense. If we don't need it, then we won't need it. But that question is just on the top of my mind.
I'll just say that I absolutely do not support that. It was my office that made these SDC waivers permanent for homeowners who are building long-term housing. I don't know why we ever were subsidizing homeowners who were building ADUs to put on the short-term rental market. We don't subsidize other industries in that manner. Why would we subsidize people who are just building wealth and creating profit for themselves while not contributing, not relieving not contributing to the relief of our housing crisis? So I'm happy with the 3-month extension. The shutdown turns out to be lasting about 3 months. We'll probably be entering phase 1 in a week or two. But just to be clear, if you're building long-term housing, which is what is needed, you get that SDC waiver. This only affects a small number of property owners. And I won't support extending it. We could talk about a payment plan or something, an extended period to pay the SDC since it wasn't anticipated. But it was hard enough for me to justify extending this at all for people who are not building housing that we need.
Commissioner Fritz.
Well, I don't support extending it for longer for different reasons. One, we can always extend it some more if that's deemed necessary. And two, I would imagine that there's people who were thinking they were going to get into the short-term rental business who might be rethinking that. So I support the resolution as written.
Sorry for trying to be helpful. Thank you very much. I withdraw my recommendation.
In these times, Commissioner, a good sense of humor is probably the most valuable of all assets. So, well said. Thank you, colleagues. I think you have your answer, Commissioner Hardesty. So this is a resolution. If there are no further questions, Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
I hate to do my boring old person, but this is an issue that I've been working on for, I think, 20 years, because I was on the Planning Commission when we first put into effect and figured out the first accessory dwelling unit ordinance. And it's been fascinating to watch it refined over time and increasingly used over time, and indeed becoming more important for long-term rentals and living situations, as Commissioner Udaly said. And so I appreciate the flexibility and the willingness of Bureau of Development Services staff to negotiate through all of these changes. And I'm happy to vote aye.
Wheeler?
Well, I'd like to thank David and Dave, both of you, for your presentation and your work to prepare the resolution for the council. I think this resolution helps provide both relief and certainty in these highly uncertain times for those building ADUs in the city of Portland. At the same time, I appreciate that the resolution addresses the decrease in demand for short-term rentals and the increase in demand for long-term rentals due to COVID-19. Good work. I vote aye. The resolution is adopted. Next item, Carla, is item number 426, an emergency ordinance.
426, amend loan repayment schedules of interfund loans from Portland Parks and Recreation System Development Charge Fund to Portland International Raceway Fund and to Pittock Parking Lot Capital Project.
The Parks System Development Charges are SDCs, or fees paid by developers on new construction, and they're used in this case to expand our city park system. The Parks SDC Fund is allowed to make interfund loans with conditions including a requirement to charge interest and a maximum term. This ordinance will make technical adjustments to two interfund loans because of the new realities created by COVID-19. We have City Treasurer Bridget O'Callaghan joining us to give us a few more details. Good morning, Bridget.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Bridget O'Callaghan, and I am the City Treasurer. Joining me today also are three representatives from the Parks Bureau, should we need them to answer questions, and that is Maximo Behrens, Todd Melton, and Victor Sanders. The purpose of this legislation is to amend and extend the repayment terms of two interfund loans to the Parks Bureau from the Parks Bureau Recreation System Development Charge Fund, the SDC Fund for parks. And as you've referenced, this has become necessary due to the financial impacts of COVID-19. There are two loans presently extended under this program. One is for the Portland International Raceway. The other is for the Pittock Parking Lot Capital Project. The Portland International Raceway loan, in August of 2018, City Council approved Resolution 37377, authorizing an interfund loan of $1.75 million from the Portland Parks and Recreation System Development Charge Fund to Portland International Raceway Fund to pay for the costs of paving the South Paddock area. In response to COVID-19, PIR is experiencing revenue shortfalls, and this proposed legislation would extend the term of the existing PIR loan from 7 to 9 years, schedules no principal or interest payments in the current fiscal year. A payment would resume for interest only in 2021, and then principal payments begin in fiscal year 2021-2022. The Pittock parking loan in March of this year of 2020, City Council approved Ordinance 189900, authorizing an interfund loan of $200,000 from the SDC fund to the Pittock parking lot capital project to pay for costs of installing meters, signage, and administrative costs for a pay-to-park system at Pittock Acres Park. Again, due to COVID-19, the pandemic situation, the Pittock parking lot project has been delayed. No funds are anticipated to be loaned in this fiscal year of 2019-2020. This legislation would amend the Pittock loan repayment schedule and due to the construction delays, and moving the first scheduled payment of the loan to fiscal 2021, the year that the loan's expected to be utilized in. The interfund loans accrue interest at the city's investment fund rate, and that interest, of course, is payable to the Park System Development Fund. So it's a neutral impact to the System Development Fund. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Colleagues, any questions? Commissioner Fritz has a question. Bridget, thank you for that presentation. Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you for the question. I don't know if there's anybody from Parks here to answer, or maybe you know. Or, well, yeah, the debt part of it makes sense to me. I'm just curious as to why the Pittock parking lot project can't move forward. It would seem like the perfect time to do it while the mansion is closed. Is there anybody from Parks here who could address that, or from Procurement?
Yeah, this is Victor Sanders here from Portland Parks. Unfortunately, just due to the shifting in staff necessity early on with COVID, we just didn't have the staff capacity to take on this project right away in late spring. And so we hope to pick that up immediately at the start of the new fiscal year as we kind of ramp down our parks response to COVID.
Oh, that makes sense. Thank you so much for being here to give us that information.
No problem.
Thanks, Victor. Any other questions for right now? 426 is an emergency ordinance. Carla, do we have any testimony?
Yes, we have one person signed up, Edith Gillis.
Oh, great. Good morning, Edith.
Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Can you see me?
No, but we can hear you.
So what I would like you to do is have a separate vote for the separate funds and loans, separate projects. This is consistent with Oregon law, one issue per vote or per ballot. I strongly agree with the pay to park at Pittock Mansion and to be using it now at that for a loan. And I strongly, strongly oppose paving and the use of the Portland International Raceway at a time when we just voted to reduce noise pollution, and we've been talking about reducing carbon emissions and climate disasters and the problems of the air pollution, the chemical pollution, the noise pollution on immune system and on respiratory health in the middle of a pandemic. I strongly disapprove of us having the Portland International Raceway. I think that instead of having us pave more, which uses more dependence on petroleum products for using that, more pollution and more heating, that we need instead to break up the roadway, have it only one lane wide, have gravel on the other side, and to, instead of having grass, have it be an organic permaculture food forest, and have it have organic pollinator garden paths. We need to have more biodiversity. We need to clean the air, cool the air, clean up the water, stormwater that goes in, and have the biodiversity that prevents the pandemics that we've had due to violation of ecosystems and violation of our biodiversity. We need to have this to make it safer and healthier for the people who live in the neighborhood, to reduce the speeding that is in the neighborhood as a result of the roadway getting people excited about that. And we need to have safe places for people to do disease distancing as they enjoy nature. And we need to have that flat area that could be used for internal refugee camps for when we have our earthquakes, et cetera. So we need to have that area not paved, not used for carbon and cars and pollution. We need to mitigate the air pollution, the diesel, the noise pollution that is harming public health and safety. And we need to actively create something that is constructive. And in that process, we can also have public art that lets folks know about our Indigenous and other people here that's consistent with 412 that I was strongly in favor of, with some very strong ways to include, and very strongly in favor of 413. So again, separate the vote, 2 different projects, go forward on the paved park at Pittock, and do not pave, do not include, and repurpose that public space for things that are good for public safety and public health.
Thank you, Ian. Appreciate your testimony. Colleagues, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
I appreciate Edie's comments, and there are climate and other issues with the Raceway. However, this isn't the process to make those change. Aye.
Wheeler?
I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item is 427, please.
Accept a grant in the amount of $1,957,230 from the Oregon Department of Transportation and authorize intergovernmental agreement for the Northeast 12th Avenue over I-84 and Union Pacific Railroad Bridge project.
Colleagues, this is a second reading. We have heard a presentation and had opportunity for public testimony. Is there any further comment or questions on this before we call the roll? Seeing none, Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 428, an emergency ordinance.
Authorize a one-time COVID-19 small business utility relief program up to $1 million and an intergovernmental agreement with Prosper Portland for an amount up to $100,000 to administer the program.
Commissioner Fritz.
Sorry, I'm toggling back between the talking points and the unmute. So thank you very much. I am very excited to bring this to council in partnership with the mayor. We know that small businesses are hurting because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And in particular, we know this to be true for small businesses owned by women, communities of color, and others with historical disadvantages to capital. I'm very happy that the Water Bureau and the Portland Water Bureau and the Bureau of Environmental Services are partnering with Prosper Portland to support small businesses through this new small business program for utility relief, or SPUR. The utilities allocated $1 million to provide financial support to qualifying small businesses in the form of a one-time credit on their sewer, stormwater, water bills, which, as we know, the water bill is actually a combination of 2/3 of the sewer and stormwater charges and about 1/3 of the drinking water. The SPUR program is designed to do exactly what its name suggests, which is to spur the vital economic activity of our small business world. The utility bureaus are investing in our small businesses now so that they will be here to invest in the water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure for years to come. In the long term, we are supporting businesses so that they can stay in business, recover, and continue contributing to our community. Using prioritization and vulnerability criteria developed by Prosper Portland, the program will provide impactful relief to small businesses by reducing temporarily an operating expense to support their stabilization and longevity as they cope with the pandemic. The credits will range from $1,000 to $10,000. Between 200 to 300 businesses will receive credits. We know that the need in the small business community is great, and we've designed this program to work with others like the CARES Act funding to help address that need. Still, we know that it's probably not going to be enough, and so we sought Prosper's assistance for the application process and the prioritization, given the success of their small business grant program in getting the money to those most needing it. This program the application will open on July 8th and stay open for 2 weeks. I think that's still the right date. Staff can correct me if not. We're keeping it open to allow businesses time to learn about the opportunity and submit their applications. We don't want to cause additional stress on our businesses by giving it too short of a time frame. On the other hand, we really want to get these credits so that businesses know that that's one less thing that they have to worry about. The Small Business Utility Relief Program is just one part of the suite of financial assistance services the bureaus offer, and other programs exist for residential customers, including multifamily tenants at risk for eviction. This ordinance authorizes the bureaus to establish the $1 million one-time Small Business Utility Relief Fund and to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Prosper Portland to administer the program, including application development and selection. And now I believe the mayor has some comments to make also.
Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. Colleagues, the City of Portland is committed to centering racial equity in our collective response to the COVID-19 crisis. The city recognizes that Black, Indigenous, and people of color, individuals with disabilities, those experiencing poverty are often disproportionately affected. The city is dedicating resources to help prevent this crisis from continuing to exacerbate existing inequities. And I'm very pleased that the Water Bureau and the Bureau of Environmental Services have partnered with Prosper Portland for this program. Prosper Portland will pair its expertise in its grant program development with the Utility Bureau's trusted infrastructure to disperse funds rapidly to diverse and women-owned small businesses throughout the Portland community. The SPUR program's guidelines have been informed by the equity and vulnerability criteria used in the Portland Small Business Relief Fund. That fund was led by Prosper Portland back in April in response to the pandemic. Prosper Portland's existing equity-centered networks and advisory bodies, leaders from other cities and financial partners played a key role in the initial development of those guidelines. And once again, I'm very, very grateful for this collaboration. And with that, I now turn it over to Gabe Solmer and Sarah Santner from the Water Bureau. Gabe, why don't you go ahead and take it away for us?
Thank you so much, Mayor. For the record, my name is Gabrielle Solmer. I am the Deputy Director of the Portland Water Bureau. Mayor and Commissioner Fritz, thank you so much. I feel like you covered so many good points. We will go through as staff to just give a few more details, but you have a lot of that information already. I'm joined by Sarah Santner from the Water Bureau and Shay Flaherty-Bettine from Prosper Portland to go through some of this information. I also want to thank the Bureau of Environmental Services, who is a key partner in this, as Commissioner Fritz said, that the utilities are really united in this work. Thank you so much to staff for putting up the presentation. As you've heard, we are here as the utilities to share our plans to partner with Prosper Portland to provide one-time credits on qualifying businesses' sewer, stormwater, and water combined utility bills through this new program, the Small Business Program for Utility Relief. Next slide. And as Commissioner Fritz mentioned, this is an expansion and the Water Bureau and BS, the expansion of us working together to adapt and continue to support our customers and all water users. As you may know, we put into place with the first when the pandemic first started, no interest flexible payment schedules available to all customers. We temporarily suspended late fees collections and stopped water shutoffs. We have a moratorium on accounts with past due balances, and we restored water service for anyone who had been turned off for non-payment. In addition, as Commissioner Fritz mentioned, we have a robust financial assistance program that includes bill discounts, both at a 50% and 80% discount. We have crisis vouchers. That is a $500 amount that is available for income qualified customers who are enrolled in the bill discount program. We have a utility safety net, which provides long-term interest-free payment arrangements if someone has an employment or medical or other personal emergency. We have a water leak repair program, and that is funding for repairs of water leaks for income qualified homeowners. And of course, you're familiar with our partnership with Home Forward, which provides multifamily rental assistance up to $500. What we wanted to do is expand that for support for small businesses, and we've developed that program. Next slide. As Commissioner Fritz mentioned, we are here before you to establish the small business program for utility relief and to authorize both the Water Bureau and the Bureau of Environmental Services to commit $1 million collectively for bill credits through this program. And we will also establish the intergovernmental agreement with Prosper Portland for up to $100,000 for program administration through Prosper. Next slide. And Mayor, as you went through BES and water, we are not neutral on racism or the impacts of institutional racism, both historic and current. And we know, as you said, that the economic impacts of the pandemic are being felt disproportionately by Black, Indigenous, and all people of color, as you went through. And by working with Prosper, the utilities are building on that established equity-centered criteria and prioritization. We were invited to present to the Portland Utility Board yesterday. They had some concerns about project management and how the utilities could accomplish this critical equity-centered work. And I just want to share that that's why we have partnered with Prosper Portland, as they have written program guidelines, and this council has approved those guidelines to address this very issue within the confines of the current pandemic. So I know that Council, you are well aware of the success of the Small Business Relief Fund, but if others aren't as familiar with that program, I'd like to ask Shay Flaherty-Bettine, who is one of Prosper Portland's project managers and worked to develop the guidance, to just go over those briefly, and then we'll turn it over to Water's program manager, Sarah Santner, to explain how that informs our program today.
Excuse me, Gabrielle, I just have a quick question.
Of course.
I noticed that your equity statement leads with women. Is there a reason why you put women first rather than Black, Indigenous, and other people of color?
I will ask Prosper, because this equity statement, I believe, comes from the Small Business Relief Fund. So we are using the same language. Maybe Prosper can speak to that. Shay, do you want to introduce or speak to that as you start your comments?
Yes, I can. And I think I'll add, that's just how it's been worded in the slide. I think our official statement reflected more of what council had approved in our previous work sessions.
I thought the equity statement was Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, and then we added other groups, but I thought we were really intentional about leading with Black and Indigenous people because of the historic harm that's been done. So I'm just curious to see this on the screen with women in the lead.
Yeah. That's correct, Commissioner, and we apologize. It is an oversight. The actual priority language is reversed. But I'll go ahead and start. If I could have the next slide, please. Thank you, Gabe, and thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for allowing us the opportunity to speak today. So I'm just going to share briefly some of our process and approach, as well as outcomes for the Small Business Relief Fund, focusing in on some of our program guidelines, marketing and outreach, as well as some of the selection process. For our guidelines, we leaned pretty heavily on our internal equity lens, as well as our small business technical assistance experience and input from community businesses through our Inclusive Business Resource Network, We also benefited from having some support from our Council of Economic and Racial Equity members, as well as inquiries that we received as part of our small business hotline that was put up to support businesses throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll also mention that the City Council was heavily involved. You'll recall that we established some priorities in order to really further refine the vulnerability priorities and eligibility criteria. And for just to remind folks what those are, those were focusing on businesses that were prioritizing employee support, prioritizing their own stability, prioritizing impact of the dollars in those businesses, as well as the use of those dollars for the individual businesses. The application was translated into the top 4 other spoken languages other than English in our region, including Spanish, Vietnamese, Russian, and Chinese. As far as marketing and outreach, it was a robust campaign, including email, social media, phone calls, our small business hotline, as well as some of our existing email lists across Portland. We did communicate extensively with our partners in the Inclusive Business Resource Network, as well as our minority chambers, our partners at Work Systems, OAMI, and we also had partners who mentioned and did some additional outreach, such as our Seoul District Business Association, TAO, BBPDX, PBA, Travel Portland, many of our minority chamber partners, and others. I'll add for the selection process. Apologies also for the busyness of this slide. You'll all recall this happened very early on in the crisis in the early weeks, attempting to provide immediate relief before federal supports came online. And we know a lot of those federal supports didn't actually reach businesses in our community. So I'll just add that that was kind of the intent early on. So in terms of the review process, early on in the process, after we'd received over 11,000 applications, with those of which about 9,000 were initially eligible, for about 4 days, the review committee dedicated a tremendous amount of time to reviewing data and applications and doing some initial analysis. There's about 7 to 8 staff involved in that. We had 3 members of our Council for Economic and Racial Equity, as well as 3 commissioner staff who then worked throughout the weekend to review some of the selections and approve the process. We focus on both racial equity and economic relief using the priorities established by council that I mentioned earlier. To expand diverse representation in our final list as we were going through the review process, we applied an equity lens that further prioritized not only demographics, but intersectional identities such as our LGBTQ+ neighbors, disabled community members, and veterans, as well as considerations for geography, industry, non-English speakers. We also had questions that spoke to past experience with bias around discrimination with financial products. The committee was also mindful of giving attention to East Portland residents, where incomes and access to resources traditionally lag behind the rest of the city. So there's a question of why we put such a heavy weight on BIPOC communities. We hope that goes without saying, but historically we know that numbers related to access to capital have shown inequities when you factor in race and gender, and we were mindful of that. For example, many of the banks that receive stimulus funds have already committed those funds to existing clients. We also feel further justified in this and when we see data from the Center for Responsible Lending showing that federal relief products like PPP and EIDL inherently in their design were unable to reach BIPOC communities. So I could have the next slide, please. So speaking to some of the outcomes, specifically of the over 8,700 applications received, we know the need was tremendous. We were not able to reach all the awardees by any means, and we know the need persists and continues in community. 90% of our awards were given to people of color, and just to not perpetuate the erasure of individual communities, I will share specifically 18% of these funds went to our API community, and that's when you factor in an earlier grant that went out to our partners at Apano as in a form of a block grant. 27% went to Black or African American business owners, 23% went to Latinx or Hispanic business owners, 16% went to Native owners, and others were, we had multiracial categories as well, and 6% went to white business owners. So I will add a little bit more about the award levels. Of the 210 businesses that received grants ranging from $2,500 to $10,000 in the fund, the $2,500 grants went to 100 community serving businesses with single employees, as in they were the only employee, many of which had furloughed workers in the hopes that they would be able to use funds to reemploy. Recipients ranged from childcare businesses to preschool providers, to health and wellness services, to beloved food carts and consumer product makers and coffee houses. These are businesses that are essential to the fabric of community. The larger grants, the remaining 5,000 and 10,000, were really to support larger businesses where the funding would have a greater ripple effect, specifically core community businesses that were taking extraordinary measures to support their employees. You know, it's really, it's a challenging thing to narrow down over 8,000 applications to 200. So we really had to focus on those businesses that were going above and beyond just to support their staff. One of the business, for example, using a $10,000 grant was using personal funds to provide food for their employees. Another was keeping employees on payroll and providing personal protective equipment at their own expense to employees. The stories just continued on and on of what our small businesses in our community were doing to support their staff. I will add that an additional group of businesses on top of the 210, about 70 businesses, were awarded funds using the same criteria that received these grants from an additional pool of money generated by both local banks and that were housed at the Oregon Community Foundation. They were on a slightly different timeline, but they were added to this pool. And I will add, I skipped on the first slide, but the method by which these funds for passed out their community were done in partnership with local community development and financial institutions. And so we had Microenterprise Services of Oregon, Mercy Corps Northwest, and Craft 3 actually dispersing the dollars to businesses directly once the selection had been made. That concludes my portion, and I'll pass it back to my colleagues at Water Bureau.
Thank you, Shay. So we just wanted to reground us all in the work that Prosper had done on the previous rounds. If we can have the next slide, please. So in developing the SPUR, we have pulled forward 3 guiding principles that will hopefully be familiar from previous Prosper work. And that is to prioritize and support the most vulnerable, applying a racial equity lens. We are centering racial equity by prioritizing BIPOC businesses. Also really wanted to have meaningful resource allocation, something that would provide impact to the businesses that we're serving. The second was we wanted to act quickly and build on the existing work. So we're using and planning to borrow from the equity and vulnerability criteria that was developed by Prosper, as you just heard Shay describe. And we're using the sewer, stormwater, and water bill to deliver these credits efficiently. Our third guiding principle is to work together, to take action in partnership. And this is an example of BES, Water, and Prosper coming together to try to serve businesses. Next slide. A bit of an overview. So the program, as you've heard already, I'll just restate, we have allocated $1 million to support the bill credits on the SPUR program. And these will go as a one-time credit on the sewer, stormwater, water bill. We anticipate the credits will range between $1,000 and $10,000, and we'll be able to serve between 200 and 300 businesses. We're expecting that the applications will be ready to open to the public on July 8th. And they'll stay open for 2 weeks. As Commissioner Fritz described, we wanted to give adequate time to allow people to hear about the opportunity and to put in their application. And then we wanted to be able to respond quickly. Next slide, please. The program equity and vulnerability priorities are, as we have discussed, the small businesses owned by Black, Indigenous, and all people of color and/or women. And also businesses that are currently open or identified to be opened in Governor Kate Brown's Phase 1 reopening plan. We have also centered a priority around childcare businesses. That's an important priority going forward. Next slide. So the eligibility requirements, and these will be very familiar to you as they are borrowed from the previous Prosper programs. The business must have lost revenue due to the impacts of the pandemic. The business, as we're defining a small business, must have $2 million or less in annual gross revenue, and the business must have 50 or fewer employees. In order to be able to provide the credit on the bill, the business must receive water, sewer, stormwater service from the City of Portland. And then the business must have been in operation and in compliance with state of Oregon registration requirements on or prior to July 1st of 2019. Next slide. So just a little bit about how the process will work. The application selection and disbursement process is just a graphic that kind of describes what we are thinking. It will be a simple online application that will be managed by Prosper Portland. We're going to utilize the tools that they've created. It will be modified for this program, but it will be based on the good work they've done. And as you know, the materials will be translated into the 4 languages that Shay described. So that's Spanish, Russian, Chinese, and Vietnamese. So the applications can be submitted online and will be open again July 8th. The utilities and Prosper will work together through the applications to use the prioritization criteria to select applicants. And the application selection will be made up of staff and hopefully outside perspective as well. Once the selection is made, the account numbers identified for the credits will be passed to the Water Bureau for upload onto the utility bills. Next slide. So I'm going to pass this back to Gabe. She's going to go over what our next steps are. And so you have the information you need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for going through that. The next steps would be if council approves today, then the Bureau of Environmental Services and Water will work directly with Prosper to reaffirm the selection process, making sure that we make any additions in getting information from outside stakeholders on this particular program, but using the established criteria and process. We will develop the application, and as Sarah mentioned, that will be translated, streamlined, mobile-friendly, and continue to build out that outreach plan to work directly with community partners so that we're reaching those impacted businesses. That would include multilingual mailing for commercial customers, a partnership with community engagement liaisons, the cells, media outreach to culturally specific media, direct outreach to community organizations and our partners. And of course, Prosper will share the information with the Inclusive Business Resources Network, minority chambers, and their other community partners, as well as past applicants from their grant and loan programs. And then we'll move to, after outreach, finalize the selection and disbursement process. And I will share that we have invited a member of the Portland Utility Board to sit on that selection committee so that we can have their input as well. During the application window and period, we have learned that it is very important to provide support to the applicants and potential applicants. So as well as having the application in multiple languages, we have also trained our call center to manage those calls. We have set up a small business hotline to manage any calls that are more complex. We have frequently asked questions to provide and a website as a resource. Slide. So just as a reminder, what's before council is an ordinance that would establish this program and authorize the utilities to commit a collective $1 million for these bill credits, and then also establish the partnership between Prosper Portland and the Water Bureau for an intergovernmental agreement for program management up to $100,000. And that concludes staff presentation. We can take any questions.
Colleagues, any questions on this item? It looks like Commissioner Hardesty. Commissioner Hardesty, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for that very detailed presentation. I'm going to ask the question because I know somebody's going to ask me this question. Are we using these funds legally based on what the rules are in the Water Bureau? Are these funds that are appropriate for us to be giving out in a way that's not actually written into law?
That is a very good question, Commissioner Hardesty. I don't know if there's a member of the City Attorney's Office that can speak to that, but I will say that we consulted the City Attorney's Office to make sure that we were drafting the program in a way that does meet all of our requirements.
Wonderful, because you know somebody's going to ask us that very soon.
Absolutely.
I just want to thank Commissioner Fritz for her work and really shepherding this forward in such a expedient manner. This is desperately needed support, and I appreciate all of you who presented today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty, for that support and also for your question. That was one of the reasons that we chose to go with a bill credit rather than giving the money as grants to community members to do whatever they felt was the most urgent for their business. So we did want to make sure, and Karen Moynihan in the City Attorney's Office has always been very diligent in the times I've been the Water Bureau's Commissioner to make sure that we don't overstep that boundary. So thank you very much for clarifying.
Any further discussion on this item? Is there any public testimony on this item, Carla?
No one signed up.
Very good. It's an emergency ordinance. Please call the roll.
Hardesty?
Again, I want to thank Commissioner Fritz. She's been committed to this ever since the COVID-19 started, and I'm happy to see this moving forward. I want to thank Prosper Portland. Prosper Portland has enhanced its reputation by the expedient nature of which they've been able to provide relief for community members who are in desperate need. And so good work all around. I vote aye.
Udaley?
I also want to thank Commissioner Fritz for championing this project. I also want to thank the work of the Water Bureau, Prosper Portland, Commissioner Fritz's team, and Commissioner Fish's team, who all work together to make this happen. This provides meaningful support for small businesses and builds off a successful framework that my office was happy to support and development with Prosper Portland and all of the other council offices. So I really appreciate how quickly you're moving to get financial assistance out the door. I know thousands of our small businesses are struggling right now. I vote aye.
Fritz?
Thank you for your support, colleagues, and thank you, Mayor, for your steadfast partnership in developing this program. I'm going to start by thanking the frontline staff in the Water Bureau and Environmental Services, whose dedication and sacrifice has been absolutely outstanding during the COVID crisis, and many of whom have kept working in buildings, and then many more have been working from home with barely missing a beat. So thank you to the staff, and thank you, Kathy Cook and the staff in the Customer Service Center at the Water Bureau. Their staff will be available to take questions about this program, as will Commissioner Udaley's staff in the information referral section, so people can call 823-4000 to get more information about this. And we appreciate the work that those staff are doing as well. And then thank you to the leadership. Water Bureau Director Mike Sturr, Deputy Director Gabriel Solmer, and Sarah Santner, the Water Efficiency Manager with the Water Bureau. You have really, you took my, oh my goodness, we need to do something about this. And just to be clear, the impetus for this was reading emails from constituents saying, I don't fit into any of the other programs that you have to help the various sectors. And so, you know, I need to be able to keep this business running so that the employees can stay employed and so that the customers or renters can keep those services going. And so that was the generation for that. And I will say, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this session, that we're currently being somewhat overwhelmed with emails coming in on other topics. So if people are still emailing me, I think I got 1,000 emails yesterday. So even I cannot respond to that many, despite as hard as my staff and I are working. And so I thank everybody who's engaging both in the acute crisis, COVID crisis response, and in the chronic Black Lives Matter racism response. And this program attempts to assist in both of those urgent needs for our community. Thank you for Prosper Portland, as Commissioner Hardesty said, becoming an excellent partner with equity-centered networks and advisory bodies, leaders from other cities, leaders from the community advising them, and also the financial partners who have played a key role in the development of the guidelines, particularly Amy Nagy and Shay Flaherty-Bettin. Your dedication has helped us develop and launch this program. Thank you to Astrid DeGory, my senior policy advisor for the Water Bureau, who has helped guide this process and who is firmly committed to the principles that have guided it. And I appreciate everybody's work. Thank you for this partnership and what it will allow us to do to support Portland small business owners. Bye.
Wheeler.
I want to appreciate the extraordinary leadership of my colleagues, in particular, Commissioner Fritz, for your hard work on this, and the city team. There were so many people who played a valuable role in this, and I think it's a great collaborative effort. It's a brilliant vision, and it's one that's keenly needed by people in the community who are hurting during this COVID crisis. I'm very happy to vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item is a 4/5 agenda. Carla, could you please read item 428-1?
Authorize a letter of agreement between the city and the District Council of Trade Unions to temporarily extend the termination date of the existing collective bargaining agreement and to help address the economic impact of COVID-19.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'm very pleased that this item is on our agenda today, and I'm enjoying the City Council's unanimous sponsorship of this item. Today, we're authorizing Kathy to sign agreements with 3 of our labor partners, DCTU, LIUNA, and ProTech. Our Human Resources Director, Kathy Bless, is here with our lead employment attorney, Heidi Brown, to present. Kathy, please take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. And good morning, Commissioners. I am Kathy Bless, Chief Human Resource Officer with the city. These 3, my remarks are going to be for all 3 of these items, 428-1, 428-2, 428-3, as listed on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't turn the page. Can you read 2 and 3 as well, please? Sorry about that.
428-2, authorize a letter of agreement between the City and Laborers International Union of North America, Local 483, to address the economic impact of COVID-19. 428-3, authorize a letter of agreement between the City and Professional and Technical Employees, Local 17, to address the economic impact of COVID-19.
Sorry about that, Kathy. Now we're all
No worries. So these 3 ordinances before council today seek your authorization for me to enter into agreements on behalf of the city with DCTU, ProTech 17, and LIUNA Laborers Group. I will briefly keep my comments related to all 3 of these ordinances. I would like to take this moment, however, and thank our union leadership, Rachel Whiteside, Tom Collette, Bao Gwynn, Pat Christensen, and Mark Hinkle, as well as their negotiation teams for their collaboration in these agreements. I would also like to thank the labor relations team within BHR, Budget Director Jessica Kennard and her staff, Deputy City Attorney Heidi Brown, as well as Chief of Staff Carly Edwards to Commissioner Hardesty, and Chiefs of Staff Kristen Dennis and Deputy Chief of Staff Jamal Fox from your office, Mayor. As was stated with other agreements approved a couple of weeks ago, all have worked tirelessly in support of getting to this moment. We continue to value the work of our employees covered under these agreements today. For your consideration, the DCTU letter of agreement includes a contract extension for 6 months, a COLA freeze until January 1, 2021, and 64 hours of furlough time for members who are eligible under the State of Oregon's Work-Share program. This letter of agreement also offers DCTU members the ability to reduce their normally scheduled hours in response to COVID-19 with approval from their bureau as an alternative to furlough days. This may offer employees a better opportunity to address work-life balance in the months ahead. Both of these approaches are eligible under Work-Share. The concessions made by the DCTU are made to support the city's budget shortfall due to COVID-19 and are valued at about $4.5 million. I fully support this agreement and ask that you approve the authorization for me to enter into the agreements on behalf of the city with DCTU. I'll pause here. Do you want to take care of that action first? Or do you want me to speak on to the other agreements?
Why don't we go ahead and do the complete presentation?
Perfect. Secondly, for your consideration is the Liona Laborers Letter of Agreement. It includes a contract extension for 1 year, a step freeze and through the next fiscal year, and 8 days of furlough time for members who are eligible under the state of Oregon's Workshare program, and 4 furlough days for members who are not eligible. The concessions made by the laborers are made to support the city's budget shortfall due to COVID and are valued at about $2.3 million. As you can see, there will be differences in each of these agreements, and each address the nuances of the memberships within these agreements. So I fully support this agreement as well and ask that you approve the authorization for me to enter into agreements on behalf of the city with laborers. And then finally, for your consideration is the Protect 17 Letter of Agreement. It includes a contract extension until December 31st of 2021. It also includes a COLA freeze until January 1st, a 6-month delay in step increases, and 5 days of furlough for employees who earn more than $29.55 per hour. This letter of agreement also offers Protect 17 members the ability to reduce their normally scheduled hours in response to COVID-19 with approval from their bureau as an alternative to furlough days. Again, this may offer employees a better opportunity to address the work-life balance, and both of these approaches are eligible under Workshare. The concessions made by Protect 17 are made to support, again, the city's budget shortfall due to COVID-19 and are valued at $4.1 million. I fully support this agreement and ask that you approve the authorization for me to enter into the agreements on behalf of the city and Protect. That completes my remarks, and I am available for questions, as is Heidi Brown, Deputy City Attorney, to answer any questions you may have.
Very good. And before we move on to that, I just want to thank you, Kathy, and your entire team. And I, of course, want to thank Heidi and our council office staff, Jamal Fox and Carly Edwards. And particularly, I want to acknowledge the great work that the two of you did. You took on leadership roles during these conversations. And of course, our labor partners for the very challenging work that they all did together. And I also want to thank the union leaders who worked with the city to reach these agreements. Collectively, these unions represent over half of the city's workforce. And of course, we'd already reached an agreement with our firefighters and the commanding officers from our police bureau. Altogether, these 5 unions represent 70% of our city's workforce. And altogether, these 5 agreements will save us approximately $14 million next year, helping us close what we will think will be about a $75 million budget gap. I've said all along that protecting our community's core services and protecting our workers are my top priorities as we navigate through this difficult budget year. And I've said that I hoped our labor partners would work with us to find savings in a way that felt right for their members. When we start with shared values and when we have clear goals in mind, we can meet these extraordinary challenges with extraordinary partnership. And I want to make it clear, everybody on this council and virtually every member of our council team worked really hard in some way or another, along with our labor partners, along with our labor negotiations team, along with our legal counsel, to come to a resolution which respects our shared values. And this speaks very, very highly of the public employees that work for the city of Portland, that they were willing to take sacrifice on themselves and on behalf of their families in order to continue to support the important work that people do here at the city of Portland. So I just want to really acknowledge that positive spirit. With that in mind, do we have any questions at the moment? Do we have any public testimony, Carla, on any of these items?
No one signed up to testify.
All right, why don't you call the roll, please, on item 428-1.
Hardesty?
I'm on mute. I will do all my thank yous now because we have 3 of these. I want to join the mayor in thanking Kathy and her team, Heidi and her team, Carly, my fabulous, absolutely wonderful chief of staff, Carly Edwards, Jamal Fox, and the mayor. Without all of us playing a role, we would not have these agreements in front of us today. And I just really appreciate our union workers being willing to come to the table and help us actually address the budget deficit that we have. None of us want our employees to have less money, but we also know the reality of our financial situation moving into the next fiscal year. I am so proud of our union leadership in the city of Portland. And as the mayor said, we now have agreements with over 70% of the city's workforce. And I am so proud and honored to vote aye.
Udaley?
Well, I just echo the thanks to everyone who's already been acknowledged. Especially want to thank the unions and every city employee. We're going to have another series of hard conversations. So I'm welcoming and inviting recommendations from our labor partners about how we can build on the positive interactions represented with these items today. As we head into the fall, I vote aye.
Fritz?
I'm also very grateful to the District Council of Trades Unions, to the Professional and Technical Union number 17, and to the Labourers Union 483 for their partnership and for the collaboration that we've seen from our Labour partners over the last few months. Thank you to the Mayor and his team who have done astonishing leadership and outstanding leadership in this time. And thank you, Kathy Bless, the Chief Human Resources Officer, and her team who have done very good work. And thank you also to Commissioner Hardesty's Chief of Staff, Carly Edwards, for her role in helping to reach these agreements. Thanks to Tim Crail, my Chief of Staff, who's been my Labour liaison for the 12 years we've been in office together. The sudden and unanticipated drop in revenues caused by the coronavirus pandemic created a hole that was unprecedented in recent city history, even in the recession. And the Mayor and the City Budget Office have done fantastic work of minimizing the long-term impacts to city services, which means minimizing impacts to Portlanders. And this is so far primarily through short-term savings through employee sacrifice. So thank you to each of our employees, whether represented or non-represented, who have been willing to make these sacrifices. Each of the 3 letters of agreement are tailored to the needs and circumstances of their memberships, which is as it should be. And again, I commend Kathy Bless and the Mayor for not insisting on a one-size-fits-all, but working with the unions so that they were able to tailor the agreements to meet their members' needs. And I do hope that their members will ratify these agreements. I appreciate that this is being done in a little bit of a different order. Often we wait for the membership to vote before the council agrees to the tentative agreement. On this one, because of the need for speed, we are saying we approve if the membership does. And that's perhaps as it should be this time, or it definitely is as it should be right now, because we can't do this without our employees. And I hope that they will ratify what their excellent leadership has done in negotiating on their behalf. There's still tough decisions ahead of us as we work to recover from the economic disruption. These agreements today go a long way to making future decisions less dire. Thank you, everyone. Aye.
Wheeler.
I won't repeat my speech or my thank yous. I just want to say, colleagues, great work. Thank you to our labor partners. Thank you to our city bureaus. This is great leadership all around on behalf of the entire city team. I'm very Proud to vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Please call the roll, Carla, on item 428-2.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. 428-3. Please call the roll.
Hardesty,
Sorry, aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go back to the one item that was pulled off the consent agenda, 416, please.
Item 416, authorize city attorney to file litigation on behalf of the city as may be required to protect its legal interests regarding the streetcar crash on May 24, 2018.
Colleagues, on May 24th of 2018, a Portland streetcar derailed, striking multiple vehicles as well as city-owned property. The derailment and crash were caused by defects in the master controller unit of the streetcar. The city purchased the streetcar and master control unit from Vigor Works LLC, formerly Oregon Iron Works LLC, which provided warranties regarding these particular products. The city intends to tender third-party claims for defense and indemnification to Vigor Works. The city has also been working with Vigor Works to resolve the city's own claim for damages. This resolution authorizes the city attorney to file suit against Vigor Works LLC if we are unable to reach a negotiated resolution in connection with either the third-party claims or the city's own claims for damage. Here to answer any questions are Ryan Bailey and Naomi Sheffield. Good afternoon. And Carla, who pulled this item?
This was pulled by Edith Gillis, but she is no longer on the line.
All right, colleagues, do you have any questions on this item? I'm not seeing any questions. Last call, is there anybody who would like to testify on this item who is present? I'm not seeing anybody flag. Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The resolution is adopted. Carla, that completes our business for this morning, does it not?
That does, Mayor.
Very good, colleagues. Thank you all. We are adjourned until 2 p.m.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted, I think Commissioner Fritz wanted to withhold her comments till the end, and I just wanted to let her know.
Good call. And by the way, before I forget, because you know I will, we're not reconvening at 2 p.m. this afternoon. We are reconvening at 2:30 this afternoon. So I want to make that quick correction before anybody tunes in at 2 o'clock and wonders, where did the city council?
Yes.
2:30. Commissioner Fritz, would you like to make a comment?
Thank you. If I'd have wanted to, I would have raised my hand, but I made some brief comments, and what I said earlier was that I would be putting out a statement. So I don't wish to make another one at this time.
Excellent. Thank you all. We'll see you at 2:30 this afternoon. We are adjourned.